please join me in welcoming Robert to the stage.
Can you hear me okay? Am I live? Excellent. Okay, good afternoon everybody. On behalf of myself and Peak Games, welcome to Casual Connect Seattle 2012. I'm going to talk a little bit about engaging your customers and understanding your customers. So before I get into that, perhaps I can do as I say and take a quick straw poll to understand my target audience today. So hands up those who enjoy long PowerPoint presentations. Okay, not too many. Out of those who don't have their hands up, anybody who's come specifically for this particular PowerPoint presentation? Probably not. Okay. That aside, obviously I've got an uphill battle with you guys to keep you entertained. The bad news is I do have a lot of slides. The good news is there are lots of pictures, so we should rattle through them quite quickly. There's going to be a little bit of geography in there, a little bit of science and equations. But hopefully a little bit of learning and some fun there too. I've got a teeny-weeny quiz at the end of the presentation just to keep you on your toes. But don't worry, I'll give you a helping hand on that, so it shouldn't be too challenging. So what I want to talk about today is how to leverage the global market. The world's a big place. It's full of lots of different people, and we've tended in the last few years to concentrate on a specific demographic, the main Western countries for the Facebook platform. What I want to relay today is that it's not just the US market or perhaps a handful of the European markets. There are a lot of people out there who wish to engage with the games and are delighted to do so when games are presented in the right way to them and the service is managed correctly. And hopefully I will at least give you some pointers and some tips for addressing those parts of the market which will allow us all to grow as an industry for the greater good of everybody. So what I'm going to talk about today is how Peak Games has gone from a regional player to a publisher of global scale that retains a local approach. We're talking in 4 parts today over the next 20 minutes or so. The first part is really just an intro to Peak Games for those of you who are not aware of what we do or who we are. And then break down the sharing of best practices and some insights into our particular business in 3 parts. The first part is how we've identified new opportunities in the Facebook platform and the users that we engage with. The second, or rather third topic, is what we're doing perhaps that is different from other guys in the space. And then finally, just highlighting what I consider to be the best practices that we've employed so that you can share and benefit from those. So the current situation is that we're around 165 people spread across 6 offices. Here's a bit of geography, the first part. So we have two offices in Turkey. The biggest is in Istanbul, the biggest city, but also in Ankara, which is the capital of Turkey. I told you there's going to be some geography. We have 2 studios in Amman, in Jordan, and in Saudi Arabia. And we also have a local footprint in Western Europe, in Berlin and in Barcelona. We've raised about $20 million to date. We've been around since late 2010. That's largely to both fund the operational growth that we've seen, which I'll talk about in just a second, but also to make some key acquisitions, which we felt was necessary to play in the local markets. Notable ones from there are the Kamilna studio in Saudi Arabia, which runs one of our biggest Arabic card games. Also Game Turk, which was one of the biggest MMO portals in Turkey that is now part of peakplus.com. We're present on pretty much all the social platforms, the hardware platforms that support the social infrastructure. And believe it or not, in just the space of 18 months, we've grown from pretty much 0 in Facebook to 10 million people checking in daily and an active user base of 33 million people. Robert likes this. On the MMO side, we have a non-significant 3 million active user base. This helps us to hone and concentrate our skills as a gaming service. Obviously, MMOs are one of the most demanding areas to service. We take a lot of the expertise that our server and the back-end engineers have and apply that to ensure we have the best-in-class services for our social games. Service is really something that I'll be mentioning a lot and be a recurring theme, and something which I really want to stress, because I think it's somewhat underrated in the current social gaming climate. People have a focus, and we see in the press lots of criticisms about how a game is worked, what kind of viral plugs it has in, very little about its reliability and its availability, and that could often kill what would otherwise be a very successful game. And as I say, I'll talk about that a little bit more. All this means that Peak Games is certainly by far and away the biggest player in the region, in Turkey and the Middle East. We talk about the Middle East and North Africa as MENA, so if I say MENA, that's what I mean, the Arab countries which make up the Gulf region and North Africa. And arguably the fastest growing social gaming startup, so a company which has devoted itself to social games right from the start, currently the fastest growing in the world. Here are 3 bullet points to summarize what we are, who we are, and I would draw your attention to the last of those bullet points. We create games, we publish games, most of all we service games, and we manage a network, a community of gamers that log in their millions to Peak Games products and services on a daily basis. Second part of the geography talent. So this really is our playground. What's interesting here, a lot of people say, well, yeah, Middle East, it's not really that significant though, is it? Yeah, there's not really that many people online. They're a bit backward. No, they're not. You've got pretty close to 115 million people who have access to the internet. Turkey alone is the 6th largest Facebook population by country, over 30 million, bigger than the UK, for example. And what's particularly interesting is that it's a market that is still undergoing enormous growth. So it's expected to pretty much triple in the next 2.5 years. And we're seeing explosive growth on the smartphone side, 50 million handsets on iPhone and Android at the moment. But that's expected to increase by a factor of 6 in the next couple of years. Just putting the context of the region against other more well-known countries. So obviously I've appropriated the Turkey and the Middle East and called it Peak, because that's our playground. So it's the 3rd largest in terms of population. It's the 4th largest in terms of GDP. And interestingly, it has one of the youngest ages of any country, which means we have a internet base, a player base, which has grown up as a generation that's only known online and downloadable digital media, and therefore very, very tech savvy and very at home with engaging with digital content and paying online. This has just put us, a bit of gratuitous self-promotion, which is obviously rude not to, just putting us into context with other players which you may feel are more established. Clearly, we're the only company with a regional approach in the top 5, and in terms of daily active users, we're the 3rd largest social gaming company in the world at the moment. A reflection of the business, these figures are obviously, for the more astute of you, will say, no, they're out of date. Yes, they are, but it doesn't change the rankings for the moment. So we have 7 million daily active customers coming into our games from our own developed games, and our published games comprise 3 million, which gives us the 10 million figure. You can check on app data if you don't believe me. Just to put that into some context, because when you're talking about millions, it's difficult to imagine. But what we have constructed in the space of 18 months is a user base the size of Portugal checking into our games every day. So imagine everybody in Portugal just said, right, I'm playing Peak Games today. That's what's happening around the world at the moment. And final, gratuitous self-promotion. That's just to put some context to where we are in terms of the business. The first square, if you like, is just a reflection of how the market has moved on in the last couple of years. I've just drawn a comparison with some of the players that were perhaps more established in 2010 and early last year, and where those companies have evolved to with Peak's ascendancy. The second square is just to compare us against what are considered hot companies in the tech space, and the third one is just to illustrate the rapidity and the speed of our growth, reaching 10 million users in pretty much 9 months compared to Twitter and Facebook. Obviously, their infrastructure is slightly more sizable, but I thought it was a useful comparison to make. So what do we do that perhaps is different from other people? Why have we achieved the success? Is it purely accidental? The first thing that we do, which perhaps is different from anybody else, is we focus very much on culturally relevant synchronous games. What do I mean by that? I'm talking about games which exist already in the countries that we target, recognized by inhabitants of that country, and are generally played in real time with other people, as opposed to an imaginary farm which you construct, which we have incidentally, and we tag on social layers and viral mechanisms to that. We focus on games which inherently have a social value and inherently and implicitly are more fun when you're playing with other people. This one is Balut, a card game which is very popular in the Gulf region. OK is a board game played by 4 people, and this is one of our biggest flagship games in Turkey. It's been played by over half of the Turkish Facebook population at one time or another. We currently have around 1 million people checking in daily, for a user base of 4 million. And the list goes on, backgammon obviously being slightly more notorious outside of Turkey and MENA, just to give you a flavour of what we do. Obviously we work on the more conventionally perceived social games, such as bubble bursting, obviously it would be rude not to, farming games, which I'll talk about in a second, how we've taken the farming genre and added the peak secret sauce to make it successful. It's the second biggest farming game in the world behind a certain Zynga's Farmville. And we also work with third-party publishers, third-party developers to bring content from the Western markets and adapt it to our regions. We're present on mobile as well, bringing our flagship products to the mobile platforms of iOS and more recently Android. And we have a fairly extensive catalogue of MMO games, again, as a complementary business to our social activities, which makes us the leading online gaming network in Turkey and MENA. So it's not just about translating the game, translating the text into the local language and shipping out there and crossing your fingers. We believe in order for a game to be successful, you need to work with a native and local team. So all of our games, whether it's a Turkish game, which is produced and managed and serviced in Istanbul, or an Arabic game, which is managed and serviced out of either Jordan or Saudi Arabia, we feel it's fundamental that the game needs to be managed by people who are in that country, who understand how people interact with the game, who understand where they interact and how they engage with the game. If you don't have that, if you don't have native speakers responding to service calls, then very quickly your users and players will see through that and not respect the service and not feel as invested in it as otherwise they would be. There are 3 things that I think we have a particular focus on. The first one is listening to here I put to our people, so that includes both the employees. We have a very flat structure in the organisation. Say we're 160 strong, but a big proportion of that feeds straight into our CEO, Sidar Sahin, which allows us to quickly filter through to senior management in the decision-making process good ideas and not have endless layers of hierarchy to dilute and to purge good common sense and innovative ideas out of the system. So we keep it flat so that we can be dynamic, we can be agile, and most of all, we can respond to the market. We also listen to our customers, both in terms of what they say in chat forums and through customer support calls. And we spend time looking at what they say. As most of you know, any free-to-play game, you'll have a lot of people being very vociferous about, oh, it's outrageous that you're asking us to pay for this, and this is too expensive. Obviously, you need to triangulate customer feedback and comments with analytics, with metrics, seeing what people are doing, how people are passing from day 1 to day 2, what your retention levels are, how people are progressing in the game, the session lengths, what is the free-to-pay conversion, all these key metrics which allow you to gauge whether a game is successful and proving persistent or not, but marrying that with the real life, if you like, comments that the users will feed through, and to respond to those. That's essentially important as well, and I'll touch a little bit on that in a second. But a lot of people play lip service to, or rather concentrate on their payers rather than their free players. For us, the free players are just as important as the payers. If you didn't have 98% of the people playing the game, then the other 2% who are actually funding the game wouldn't be there because it wouldn't be fun. I mean, I don't think you've ever heard anybody saying, oh yeah, I went to a great party last night, there was hardly anybody there, I didn't know anybody, I had such a good time. You know, you need to have other people around you, even if you're not interacting with them, just the fact that you know everybody's there makes it a cool place to be. So you need to have those free players in order to give it social relevance. And we deliver what they want, both in terms of understanding what the needs are, the improvements in the game that people ask for, and ensuring that the game is there when they want it. There's nothing that kills retention and engagement more than checking into a game either through a bookmark or through a response to an invitation and finding that the game's down for maintenance work, or you're stuck on the loading screen, or it just keeps reloading. With a free-to-play game, there are far too many other options and alternatives out there for that person to stay with you, and you'll lose them, a valuable customer, very quickly. So it's all about delivering what they want and making sure it's there anytime they need it. And inevitably, of course, there will be problems, there will be outages, people will pay for things and it won't appear, and you need to make sure that your service support is spot on to look after those customers and give them the sense that they are valuable to you, because obviously they are. Social games certainly are a science, much more of a science than a lot of the critics think. You know, they say, well, social games, they're very simple, they're not real games. They are, as we all know, exceptionally complex, both in terms of the economy, in terms of how you analyze the sheer scale of popular games. And it is a science to manage that, but at the same time, it's an art form, and you need to have people who are genuinely passionate about what they do. We're very lucky at Peak to have a very competent and exceptional team, and people who genuinely love making games and playing games. But at the same time, guarding and keeping an objectivity about what we do, being emotional and passionate about what we do, but not making sure that spoils our objectivity. If we think something would work in a game, really it's for the end consumer to decide that. So we do user testing, we do focus groups, and it's not the games team which decide how the game's going to pan out. It's what customers respond to that determine what the game does and how it evolves. So what are we doing that perhaps is slightly different from our competitors and our colleagues out there in the social game publisher space? Perhaps a couple of specifics. One thing I mentioned already, which I'll just reiterate, is a focus on relevant titles. And by that, what I mean is presenting a gaming proposition to consumer that they instantly recognize and can relate to. If you have, it's great and it's fantastic for the freshness of the industry to have a brand new gaming concept or something really, really crazy. But at the same time, it means there's a certain barrier to entry for that individual. They've got to understand what your game's about, understand how to play it. If you bring something like poker and say, hey, do you want to play poker? I know how to play poker. I don't have to go through a tutorial. I know whether I like it or not. I'm in there and I'm playing straight away. If I've got to work out how catapults work and what I need to click in order to get something from the store and where the store is and there's a market and all these kinds of things, I've got to invest a lot of time initially before I can make the judgment whether I like the game. And a lot of people don't either have that time or don't want to spend that time. So making something which is relevant, which instantly communicates to your target audience is primordial and key. An example of this is OK, which is the board game played by 4 people. Everybody in Turkey has played it. So as soon as you invite someone to play OK, they know what it is. They don't have to go through a tutorial, and they're straight in. And the added advantage is that they know that there's an enhanced value by playing with their friends. And so they invite people. They want to be online with their friends, as opposed to perhaps a more abstract virtual world game where you think, well, do I really want to send a pink sheet to my friend and everybody else seeing that I'm sending a pink sheet? Yeah, this is something which is much more relatable and much more real to the people playing it. Just in case you didn't believe me, this is 4 Turkish people playing OK. Some of you may have seen the girl on the back there not playing. And in fact, the 4th player is the person taking the photo. So there are 4 people playing. This is Balut, the Arabic card game, which is particularly strong in the Gulf region. Again, played by 4 people. And again, you have a desire and obligation, moral obligation, social obligation to play with other people. It makes sense to play with other people. It gives you added value. And so that makes viral distribution much more effective than trying to coerce people into spamming their friends or inviting their friends. in order for them to have some kind of Pavlovian reward for doing so. We give an implicit reason for the player to have more fun by being with their friends. And in doing so, particularly with synchronous games, the added advantage is that people are playing, people are engaging in real time. And so we put a lot of social channels into the games. For example, here, real live chat, so that people can converse and interact with friends. And they can also, through a shared experience, make friends with people perhaps they didn't know before. And this is creating a community within the Facebook community itself. And that's hugely valuable to the emotional investment that people perceive to have for a given game. Once you have someone committed to a game, feeling part of a community, making suggestions about how the game can be improved, you have a wonderful amount of customer fidelity that then creates barriers for other people to steal those customers from you, but in a positive way, of course. The other significant advantage of real-time gameplay, particularly with simple mechanics, is that you have people who are then engaged in a very simple gaming mechanic, which allows them each game to be different. So as opposed to a game which has a content-driven cycle where you get to a certain level, then you open up a new area, and then you get through that new area, then you want some new weapons, or you need a new area to go to. Simple mechanics which are repeatable but always unique allow you to keep playing without having that sense of fatigue or that sense of, well, it's getting a little bit samey now. So this gives extremely long life cycles to customer engagement, and obviously the lifetime value from those customers who are spending regularly, engaging regularly, is much higher. And for us, those two things are key. So user-generated content, whether that's becoming part of a community, but also playing a game and not ever having the same game twice, gives you much more significant lifetime value. And we see very, very strong ARPUs and very strong LTVs in Turkey and in Arabic areas in general. For example, Kuwait, Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, where we have a very strong farming game, we see average ARPUs in the region of 7 to 10 cents. These are average ARPUs that are higher than you see in the US. There are big spenders in these regions. And also, within that community, solicit people to share that experience. And you can do that much more effectively if you give them things which are meaningful to share. So I gave the pink sheep example just a short while ago. People may be reticent about what they, obviously a lot of people haven't put their friends into groups and are a bit reluctant to show other people that they're playing these strange and bizarre games. Here, we've expressly introduced items which you find in the real world. So they're more meaningful to share, they're more meaningful to gift to other people. And games is very much a service. We've moved away from the product model, and it's a persistent engagement with end users. So you need to be sure that over and beyond the game interaction, that you're soliciting response and engagement from your players and your user community. So making sure that you give out relevant information, you give them shareable content, which they want to share, rather than trying to impose some kind of sort of pain and reward system where you get them to share for getting something. So things that they'll voluntarily share. And also keep them engaged in the game. If you are having, or you're going to have a planned outage, if you let people know in advance, it takes away a lot of the pain that you would see if that outage is non-planned. And let them know about new features. Tease them with things that are coming into the game. It all gives a much more stronger sense of community and engagement within the game itself. And culturalization is a big part of what we do. Here's an example of, and I always get the pronunciation wrong, but Al-Nazara Saida. So I hope there aren't any Arab speakers who've just seen that I've massacred Happy Farm in Arabic. But this is a game which you can see very blatantly has been heavily culturalized. So it's not just changing the wording to Arabic wording or whatever the local language is. It's changing the characters and the whole imagery of the game to give it the feel and the sense that it's relevant to the local culture, from blue moss to halal food in the game itself. And I'm going on over a little bit of what I planned, so I'll move through this very quickly. I've spoken before and reiterated about games as a service. It's very important and an underutilized resource, which is making sure that you'll respond to customers. I've read numerous times that if you respond after an hour to a customer, then you've probably lost the interest of that customer. So on average, we get back to customers within 30 to 40 minutes. As a whole average, it's under an hour and a half. So why does it work? I'll rip through the slides because I'm aware of the time. The most valuable currency to a player of free-to-play is the time. How much time they're going to invest in your game as opposed to all the other games that they have. Is it really free? You've got to try and make it impossible for them to misunderstand the goal. You've got to get them engaged straight away. You need to make it relevant to that user. Engage and utilize language which they're familiar with. They don't have to subconsciously translate, even if it's in their language. So speak to them with vocabulary that is familiar. Don't let them do the hard work. Don't let them get engaged in the game or have to look around to progress. Make sure you spoon feed them without patronizing them. And check your jokes as well. That's one thing that I found in a lot of translations. They're too literal and the humor just isn't there when it's been translated. Anybody any ideas what this equation is representing? Okay, a volley of hands are coming up there. It's the minimum barriers to entry equal the minimum barriers to exit. What I mean by that is that if you have an open door and people come in, it's a free trial. It also means that they don't have any investment in the game, so they can exit as well. So if it's easy to come in, it's easy to get out, and you shouldn't forget that. Don't confuse attention with intention. We spend a lot of time optimizing our achievements and notifications, feeds and invites, when a lot of people have come to Facebook to check out the photos of their boss who's been compromised at a party. People come to Facebook to engage with their community. They don't necessarily come there to play games. They do, obviously, incidentally, but they're not there for that as a primary purpose. So make sure you're speaking to customers in the context of why they're there. And this is just to outline that the customers are very different people. They can have, perhaps you've identified that your core customers are females between the age of 25 and 40. But where are they? What type of person are they? Is it a married woman who's at home? Is it a relatively young executive? For farming games, we typically see a female-dominated demographic. In our farm game, the core spender and player is in fact a 30 to 40-year-old Arabic executive. So this is the little test I warned you about earlier on, and I'll run through this quickly. I just wanted to show you just a silhouette of an object for you to guess what it is. As I mentioned, it's not a hard test. Anybody any ideas what this is? I cheated slightly because I gave you some contours. Guys, you guys are good. And obviously we're in Seattle, so it's got to be a Starbucks one. Any ideas what this is? There we go. This is in fact a cup of Turkish tea. I do that just as a banal example, but when you're playing a game and you don't have much time or much concentration in the game, you work on subconscious recognition. And so it's not just a question of the text in the game that people rarely read anyway. It's how you present the images and present those in a way which customers will recognize straight away. People don't live life in the same way in lots of different areas, and you need to adapt to that. Hopefully I've shared a number of practices which you might find useful in your game. I think it's important for everybody to address a market which some have said is stagnating for the Facebook platform. We firmly believe that's not the case. There are huge pools of users who would just jump at the chance to have a proper and compelling game service. We've tapped into those in Turkey and the Middle East. There are several more in Mexico and Brazil and Indonesia. So there's a lot out there for people to engage with and to make solid business from. Thanks for your time.